The spinal cord contains two different types of matter, broadly speaking. This here is gray matter. If it's gray matter, what is it made up of? What does that mean? That means that it's made up of nuclei, cell bodies, gray matter. The rest of it is going to be white matter. What does this mean? This means it's myelinated axons primarily. So this is going to have different functions. This internal kind of butterfly shaped thing is going to be made of cell bodies, of neurons. Of course, there's neuroglia around as well. This white matter either has axons that are traveling towards the brain or descending, so either ascending or descending. And they're going to be traveling to similar locations in tracks. Information is going to leave and enter the spinal cord through roots. So here is one root. Here is another root. Let's name these. If we were going to name these roots, so roots like coming from a tree, we would name this one in the back. I guess I should let you know that this back here is posterior. This is where the spinous process would come off back here on the bone. So this root is going to be called the posterior or dorsal root. So this one up here must be the anterior or ventral root. Great. These roots contain the axons of neurons that come from the gray matter of the spinal cord. So I could have a neuron cell body right here. It's going to travel out this way. Can you see that multipolar neuron? It's a motor neuron. So if I were to label this gray matter up here, the gray matter is all called horns. It looks like horns in a picture. This is going to be our ventral horn. Back here is going to be our dorsal horn. For certain sections of the spinal cord, like the one I've drawn here, there's also going to be a lateral horn. This carries autonomic information, so it's not present throughout the entire spinal cord, just a portion of it. If we continue drawing these roots out here, some things are going to happen. First of all, we're going to have what's called a dorsal root ganglion. And then these two roots are actually going to combine. This is, once they combine right here, this is going to be our spinal nerve. I said dorsal root ganglion. You hear me say that? That's what this thing is. What is a ganglion? A ganglion is a collection of cell bodies, neural cell bodies, in the peripheral nervous system. Why would there be cell bodies right here? Well, these are the cell bodies of unipolar neurons. They're going to have their axons travel this way to the dorsal horn, and their dendrites are going to travel this way. Where to? To the sensory, to the periphery. They're receiving motor information from the peripheral nervous system, from the skin, muscles, etc. That information is going this way So this would be over here, our sensory or afferent division of the nervous system. This here, I already drew you a motor neuron with this axon going out that way. This is our motor division. Let's say we had another neuron in the gray matter here. So let's say we have a neuron like right here that's going to talk to this neuron right here. That's an interneuron. Remember, we have interneurons within the central nervous system. This is going to be the basis of a reflex pathway, is information coming in from like the patellar tendon and relaying information to the motor division to respond. So this is a similar image here. This is drawn. What I want you to be able to do is practice labeling these things. Label everything that I showed on the previous slide. Here's a slightly better image where you can see right here, the spinal nerve. That is the joining of your ventral root and your dorsal root. So does a spinal nerve contain sensory or motor information? Both. This is motor, this is sensory. We'll talk later about the split over here. Another image to show the same thing, adding a little bit more complexity on here. Not for this one, but this is a reference for that same idea here. Posterior root ganglion is the same thing as a dorsal root ganglion. And then we're going to label again these different horns of the gray matter with what type of information they carry. You already know this is sensory, this is motor. I said something about autonomic for this one. So let's look at that in more detail. Both the lateral and the ventral horns, that's these two, carry motor information. Somatic motor, you know what that is. Going to skeletal muscles. Here is actually an image of those neurons, multipolar neurons traveling out, somatic motor neurons. Visceral motor, what is that? That's autonomic, right? Autonomic. Autonomic motor means this information is being carried to the viscera, so heart, digestive system, lungs, etc. The dorsal region, the dorsal horn, is going to contain sensory information, the cell bodies of sensory information. So there's a cell body here that travels and synapses with a cell in here that's receiving that sensory information and doing something with it. So that's going that way. This is our dorsal root ganglion, of course. This receives information from the external environment or the internal body about body position and carries it to the dorsal horn of the spinal cord. I don't care if you know where the somatic and visceral sensory regions of the spinal cord are. This image is great for, know this image. Last thing I want to show in this video, I'm going to do this again in another video because you can't see the ganglia too many times. Here is again up here the spinal cord cross section with motor information going out, sensory information going in. If we zoom in to that dorsal root ganglion, this is what that looks like. Here's the anterior root, motor information going out. So there's axons traveling through this dorsal root ganglion. Then we've got sensory information coming in. These are unipolar sensory neurons that are part of that afferent pathway carrying information from the external or internal environment to the spinal cord.